Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I've got a great guest on. Her name is Dolores Feliciano. She's an advocate slash activist for alienated parents since 2015. She has numerous YouTube videos. One is called Family Unjustifiably Torn Apart, and it's an interview with Dolores. That's one that you might want to look at. It's very interesting. Also, Dolores has taken part in protests in front of social services buildings. And she also has a video that was done in front of the UN building as well. She also has parents that contact her for advice and help. And she does assist with advice, but she's not an attorney, but she is welcome to talk to people, to give her experience, her advice, and guidance through this horrible family court system. So how are you doing tonight, Dolores?
I'm doing well, Marianne. Thank you.
And so I don't know how your day's been going. It's been kind of a busy day here and there for me. But, I've got some questions here for you because you've done so much to help people. And there's so much to talk about with this broken system and CPS. I know you represent yourself, which is also called a pro se litigant. And you're a very accomplished survivor as well. And in 1962, family court evolved and messed up a lot of our lives.
True.
And how can you, when you talk to these parents, how do you speak to those people that are trying to make it on their own as a pro se litigant representing themselves?
Well, Marianne, first, I want to thank you once again for inviting me to speak on your podcast. Being rejected is inevitable when one goes against the grind,
Mhm.
against the quote unquote norm, especially when it comes to advocating for innocent victims of the corrupt family court system and then becoming an activist for its due reform. Um, Since 2013, I have since exhausted continual efforts to be heard by legislation, congressmen, senator, and the United Nations, not to mention numerous broadcast television network and the press. I truly believe that if it weren't for social media and the many innocent moms and dads sharing their similar tragedies, the knowledge of family court and the corruption it withholds within its judicial system and its affiliate agency known as CPS, we would have it would have never came to light. So I want to thank you for inviting me as a guest to speak. Um,
Well, I'm glad to have
um,
you on because you
Thank
have
you.
done
Thank
these
you.
protests sitting there in front of the CPS building while they have the gall to turn on the water sprinkling system.
Yes, yes, that did happen to us. But that
And
didn't stop me. I went there again and a second time and then a third. Um, uh, and it was successful. So that that that's just child's play, trying to be a deterrent, to try to get me away, to try to get us away to speak. Um, but you had asked me a question regarding, what was the question you had asked before? I'm sorry.
well, when you talk to these parents about
Had,
representing themselves,
oh, yes,
and
yes, yes.
what's your best advice you can give a parent that's, I don't know what to there's just so many things you can say.
Yes. I'm first going to say it takes a lot of courage, determination, dedication, strength, smarts. You have to be fearless, and you have to have perseverance, but most of all, you must have faith in yourself and the principle of the matter. You must. Believe it or not, having the common sense of simply knowing from what is right and wrong is generally what keeps you going, kept me going. You must be willing to work and to go the extra mile And that means documenting everything with names, dates, and times, making the time to research and seek answers at either at the court library, which is what I did, or the web, on how to write petitions and or motions. There are also paralegals who are licensed to do such tedious tasks, but at a cost that you may or may not be able to afford. Hence, that's why I went pro se. Um, you're right, I'm not an attorney, nor am I a legal advisor. I speak solely from my experience alone. I'm not a pessimist or an optimist. I'm a realist. And when dealing with the family court, you will quickly become just that. Um, you need to expect the worst and pray for a good and fair outcome, because when you are dealing with a corrupt system whose sole interest is to profit from your case, you haven't stand a chance unless you hire either an out-of-county attorney who doesn't care about your county's politics, or an attorney who knows your judge well enough, either on a friendship basis or on a
Yeah.
campaign basis, in
Mm-hmm.
which both types are considered conflict of interest. Um, and when going pro se, although allowed, it is most often frowned upon. And that is only because the judge would have to listen to you and your testimony along with evidence. He or she would have to talk with you and treat you as if you were an attorney, and therefore would not be able to swindle against you. Um, this is when the court judge will first ask you and then try to persuade you in assigning a court-appointed legal aid
Mm-hmm.
that will generally play a role along with the judge about your case. So going pro se will only pose as a threat to a judge. Then again, finding an attorney that is willing and able to fight for you and your rights is a risky or even uncertain matter. And by the time you have run out of money and have lost all hope. I say keep hope alive and go pro se from the beginning. Then at least you won't end up destitute. That's
That's
what,
actually very true. Yes, I agree.
it's having been through it all and having not known then what I know now, I would have gone pro se from right from the beginning. After 4 attorneys who've done nothing for our case, nothing at all for my daughter's case, law guardian assigned, did nothing for the case. You might as well just go pro se. Um, and
Yeah, I agree, because what happens is you start in turn swiping credit cards to pay the attorneys, and then you've got yourself in such debt that it will take years and years to get out of.
oh yeah, it took my entire life savings that I had, close to $50,000. It
Yeah,
took.
it's just plain extortion, and
Yes.
people need to know this when they enter those doors of the family courtroom.
Oh yes.
And like I know people are looking for a story with a happy ending, and not all stories have happy endings.
No, unfortunately not. And everybody has their own story. Not everybody's story is the same. Not everyone's situation is the same. Not everyone's reason for being or being put in the family court system is the same. But generally, the outcome is similar.
You're correct. I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Once you're in those doors, I call it the web. Once you're in those doors, it's very difficult to get out and to stay out. So,
And to even extract yourself.
yes, yes, you're in the Black Widow's web.
Right. And the thing that starts this, a lot of problems for a lot of people, I guess, in my opinion, is CPS. Someone calling in a false allegation on you for something frivolous and fraudulent. to be honest.
Oh, yes.
Um, do you think CPS has more power than the police? What's your take on that?
My take is that I have witnessed that this government-run, state-funded agency titled CPS, Child Protective Services, use and abuse their given authority without question and or consequence. Therefore, I have to believe that CPS's quote unquote power is regarded greater than our police. Um, CPS has been known to walk into public schools, state-funded schools, without needed prior notification, flash their ID badges, state their reason to administration as to why they're there and what it is they plan to do, have a student be removed from their classroom only to have them being interrogated and manipulated into thinking or believing that their parent has done something wrong, and then removing them from the school because they feel it's in their best interest. Uh, it's it is easier for CPS to abduct your child from school than it is for them to do at your own residence. Why? Because they're dealing with public. I feel that because they're on public property when it comes to school. In your residence, they need a warrant. I speak from my experience of this personal attack and horror because of my persistence in in with finding CPS and neglect of my younger daughter's case. They abducted my older daughter from school and placed her within a group home in hopes that I would give up. There was nothing that police could or would have done about that.
They're like middlemen.
Yep.
They're not even told what or why. They just show up. And I know
Mhm.
people talk about defunding the police and things like that. I don't think
Mhm.
that's the answer.
No, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. Defunding the police, it would be like defunding the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, the fire department. We need the police. Okay, there are bad apples everywhere in every profession. Um, you can't punish the whole because of one. It'll defeat the purpose of them being there in the first place. The police are there to enforce the law. They're there to enforce the policies of the law. Hence the word police, policy police. Um, they're not told as to why CPS does what they do. They're just told to stand by and support their efforts. Um, it's a sad situation to know that this government agency has more power or more authority than the police. It's really sad and scary when you think about it.
Yeah, it's very scary that they can waltz into your child's middle school, pull them
Oh
out,
yes, oh yeah.
and I mean, I
Literally,
even
literally, literally abduct. It's literally an abduction. I actually know what it feels like to come home and your child's not there when you're expecting them to be. It's
how
like
terrible, terrible.
I definitely know what it feels like to have an abduction. And that was a separate case in itself that I had, that I was derailed. I was literally purposely derailed from my other daughter's case to now deal with my eldest daughter's case and get her out of that group home. And I did. And I had a neighbor step up and to watch her, and CPS tried to work the neighbor into going against me. And it took about 2 months. I had no contact with my daughter. They would make up lies. CPS paid them to watch my daughter, and at the same time, were feeding the neighbor lies about me. Um, had me on watch. My daughter couldn't even speak to me in private on the phone. It was horrible. It was horrible. It was very hard. Um, but
Like,
eventually, with my persistence and with my persistence, I was able to get my daughter out of that home and to bring her back home. And it turned out that the neighbor eventually found out that they were being lied to. She actually asked for my forgiveness right there in court. That she claimed she had no idea what they were planning on doing, and that she was sorry. And of course, I forgave her because so many people don't know, Marianne.
No, they
The
don't.
public does not know what this agency, what the family court's capable of doing, unless they're in it themselves, and or if they know someone, a friend of a friend or a family member that's gone through it. They don't know, and a lot don't want to know. A lot don't want to know.
Well, and the thing is, they may have to find out. I hate to say it, but what happened to us can happen to
Yes,
anyone.
it could happen to anyone, and it has. It's happened, and it's not just the meek, and it's not just the destitute, or stereotypically speaking, people think it's those who are drug related or impoverished. Or no, it's happened to the middle class, it's happened to doctors, it's happened to actors, it's happened to famous people, it's happened to you, it's happened to me. It can happen to anyone.
And that's just very, the word I'm looking for, they're very opportunistic is the word I was looking for. CPS is
Mm.
very opportunistic. And I have heard that 70% of their phone calls are just false allegations.
Try 85%. That was what I was told by a caseworker.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
I'll go with that.
85% was calls made into that 1-800 number. Again, a third party number, okay, which
To
doesn't make
destroy
sense.
families.
To
Right.
destroy families, use as a tool, uh, to have someone take away your child, either through vengeance or hatred, or you know, uh, it's horrific. It's horrific. And again, with false allegations that were, mind you, unfounded many times over. In my
Right.
case, many times over, and yet they'll still persist. And here comes another notification on your door with another
Mhm.
accusation, and again unfounded. So it's definitely harassment in the first degree. um, and you know, you're told that if someone continues to harass in this manner and it goes unfounded, then they could actually be caught, uh, for lying, and it's a crime. But yet they don't do anything about it. They don't
I
go
don't
after them.
Yeah, I don't understand why that is because I heard the same thing, that there was some
Yeah,
law about this.
somewhere in the very, very fine lines, somewhere, a little bit of a law somewhere. Uh, but it's never acted on. And it wasn't in my case. So it became a constant battle between me and CPS. It wasn't even a battle between me and my ex-fiance, and or his uh, his partner, new partner, then became wife, who is a retired NYPD. See, there you have it again. You have the manipulation of the police, the status of police. You know, these are all puppets. They know the system. They know how it works, and they get away. They do get away with it. Not all, but yeah, they do get away with it. Just like the Thomas Fowler case here in Suffolk County, Long Island. I have a similar case. My case is similar to that. Um, but you know, if it wasn't for that case and that father who worked in law enforcement, who got himself caught, this would have never came to light as it is now. It's
Right.
because it involved law enforcement, and it just rose up from the soil. And yeah, so I do believe that, thank God for social media. Um, because if it wasn't for and if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for warriors like you, like many other moms and dads out there still fighting for their child's rights, and their own rights, which that's a question. Do we have rights?
That is a
um,
question.
well, we'll get into that later. But yeah, so it's an evil entity.
And I feel it should be abolished. I feel
Yes.
CPS should be just defunded, abolished, shut down. They serve no
Hmm.
earthly purpose. They're not even doing their
Hmm.
job. And I notice on Facebook, I see a lot of memes, however you pronounce that, but they're calling these people social workers when in fact they're just inept case workers. And I
Hmm.
feel we should call them what they are: perpetrators, caseworkers.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, you happen to be right in regarding what you just stated. Caseworkers, judges are not judges; they're administrators. They're given these titles. I do agree with you. I have to agree that this system should be abolished. Um, in 1962, um, this is how this family court came about. Um, it was created by Congress in 1962, and we the people never had a say. We never consented to it. Um, and it cost us from having the ideal nuclear family where mom would stay home and raise child and father would provide while having to work. Federalism ideology stepped in with the plan to profit by creating a false system in order to manipulate and use the modernized family. uh, Congress designed this family court system along with its supporting CPS agency, a system we were made to believe to be a place of refuge from domestic issues, divorce, and/or separation, when in fact all it became, or should I say now, is believed to be a worldwide systemic plague, only out to profit from broken households by using their children to keep an ongoing battle between moms and dads. Um, Without any empathy and/or remorse of their harmful ramifications. The system destroys the family unit by leaving moms and dads either destitute, poverty stricken, drug addicted, incarcerated, parental alienated, and or suicidal. The courts will continue to use their affiliates that aid and abet to support their heinous agenda that includes and not limited to court officials, attorneys, guardians ad litem, CPS agency, forensic evaluators, and generally anyone who is employed and or otherwise obligated to the system.
And they don't know when to quit
They
because
don't.
once, yeah, they'll put one false allegation on you. And once you get that settled down and there's more in, you have more children, they'll just go after the next one.
Oh, definitely. That's what happened in my case.
Right.
Because of my persistence and trying to prove them negligent on my younger daughter's case, um, they they attacked and they abducted my daughter, my older daughter, took her right from underneath my hands without even notifying me. And the schools, you know don't have any control over them. They're told just to not ask questions, to let them come in and do what they have to do. And it was horrifying. It was horrifying. My elder daughter had to go through a lot after that, and I specifically remember her uh, telling me, Mom, I'm being forced to grow up. It just came right off the top of her tongue. I'm being forced to be an adult. And I said to her, I said, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You know, um, it was wrong. It was wrong and just to do what they had done. But it didn't stop me. It didn't stop us. And you just have to go about it a different way. They're relentless, Marianne.
Hmm.
Family court is relentless. CPS agency are relentless. And I'm not going to say all caseworkers are bad, because like I said, there's good and bad in everything. There's always going to be a bad apples. There are caseworkers who have no idea what they're getting their hands into until they get in it. And I know some caseworkers that couldn't last. They didn't last to be in it because of what actually is happening. And it's proven uh, to be truthful when I spoke at legislation, Suffolk County legislation, Nassau County legislation, after the Thomas Valva case, when CPS was put to question. And a lot of caseworkers came and they had a lot to say. Some of them don't agree with what policies they have, and their policies are outdated. They're old, and they just don't make sense. The training that these caseworkers have, it doesn't make sense. What, like, I think 20 hours of, they said that they had 20 hours of training. Their policies are outdated. They don't do interviews on the weekends when that's when visitations are. Uh, they choose who they want to interview. They choose what side they want to interview. Sometimes they don't even interview the other side of the family. That also
Right.
happened in my
Oh,
case.
happened to me. Yes, me
Happened in my
too.
case. We were never interviewed by CPS. Neither one of our family members were interviewed. And it's just a setup. It's a setup. They pick a side, they're biased, they pick a side, and generally that's what they do. And I'm not going to even start with what they do with the children. Manipulation and parental alienating and terrorizing them. It's a sin.
And what has it cost your family? I mean, even my family, the emotional stress and duress. It has caused anxiety in the children. Do you want to elaborate on that?
What it's cost, what it's cost the family is destruction within the family
Right.
circle. When my younger daughter, when she would be visiting with us, when they were trying to still take away custody, and I was still fighting, she was still visiting with us, and seeing the change in my daughter was worse than watching a horror flick. That's the best way I can tell you. She went from a happy-go-lucky little girl to a frightful, secluded, what's the best word I can describe it? Mummy.
Hmm.
That's the best word I could describe it. Whenever she'd come to visit, she wouldn't talk. She wouldn't play with her big sissy anymore. She would lash out at her. She would start hitting her and telling her phrases like, "Now you stop, you be a good girl." I would see eating habits change. I would see her rummage for food. Um, I would give her, okay, let's just say, she would be eating dinner and she would take her plate and hold onto it like if someone was going to take it away. And she would eat so fast. And I would see markings and I would see nighttime behavior. And it was just every weekend was a new scene. And every weekend she would be exhausted as if she hadn't rest. And then there were times when she would come to me sick and I would have to take her to the doctor. And I mean, literally sick. It was one time she had pus coming out of her eyes and I was like, what's going on? And I could just tell that she wasn't being treated well at the house. And when they were coming to me with these allegations and I read what was on those papers, I actually vomited. I vomited. It was just so horrendous as to what they were claiming that I was doing. I actually, the light bulb came on and I said, oh my God, my daughter is experiencing this over there. From everything that she's been expressing and doing and showing and screaming and crying, begging me not to take her back there. I mean, no one would believe me. It's, and I could see why people don't want to believe it because it's too unbelievable. Do you understand what I mean?
Right.
The horror of it is too unbelievable. When people heard the things that were done to Thomas Valva, it was unbelievable. When people heard or read, I should say, read the newsday clippings of children in past years that have been abused to death, you know, it's too horrific to believe it, but it happens. And yet when it's happening to you and no one wants to hear it, no one wants to take it for truth, you're like, what can I do to make these people listen? What can I do to make these people believe it? So I started recording. I started recording my daughter's cries. Who does that? Who does that? Because no one wanted to. She would literally scream, please don't bring me back there. She would
How
scream,
sad.
mommy, bring me some food because they don't feed me. You know, just things that you just don't want to believe yourself. And I took it to police advocates. I took even the phone calls calling her at night were being manipulated, were being coerced. She would go through times of, we'd be singing songs, and she was 4 at the time. We would be singing songs. Our ritual every night is sing songs before bedtime, and then the phone would get interrupted, and then she'd start crying, and then she'd come back and say, "Mommy, I'm a good girl, right? I'm a good girl." Things that just would make you question as to why she's saying these things. Until I had taken it finally to a precinct advocate here in my town and had her listen in on the phone call conversation from the recording. And yeah, they wrote reports. She wrote report. And there was one particular phone call that she had to call CPS. And do you know what CPS told her? That there was no physical evidence for them to set out an open case. They needed physical evidence. Yeah.
Hmm.
1 week later, she resigned. And she says, I don't do this anymore. She goes, I can't do this anymore. Too many phone calls and rejections from CPS. She actually left. She quit. And the day came when my worst fear happened. And it was over a phone call. I was on my way to work one evening, and our nightly phone call came through. And she was telling me adult things, something only an adult would tell her or say to a child. And so I just came back and I said, "Oh, you're being silly. Who's making you say these things? You're being so silly." And then she would go, "Well, Mom, Daddy, Michelle," I'll mention names, and all of a sudden, click, the phone hung up. My heart went right into my stomach. I
Mm.
knew that something terrible happened to her. And I sent police over there. They came back saying nothing's being done, blah, blah, blah. That was Wednesday. Come visitation on the weekend, it showed. And it was markings and bruisings on her ears, on both ears, and almost black. That's how bruised they were. And mind you, this is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days later. Okay, I can imagine. So I found out and giving her a bath, and I was shocked. I actually gasped when I saw it, and I called my older daughter to come in to verify what I was looking at. And um, I just kind of asked my child, what's happened to your ears? She goes, oh, nothing. And she'd be swishing back and forth in the tub. And I knew that if I persisted in asking, it would go nowhere and it would only upset her. So I just left it. But I had to do something. So that weekend, the doctor's office was open every other Sunday, and it happened to be that Sunday. So I took her to her doctor's office, and sure as anything, my daughter would say, I fell from a chair. It's exactly what she said. I fell from a chair. The doctor gave her an entire head to toe physical exam and took me aside in private and said, there's no way this child could have fallen from a chair. There's no other contusions on her body showing that she fell from a chair. These are bruisings on the top of her ears, both sides in the same areas, as if someone grabbed both her ears and lifted her up and just squeezed. That's exactly what it looked like. And the doctor said that she had to call it in. And my daughter just, the story was, she fell from a chair and eventually she said, Daddy did it, but I'm not supposed to tell, something like that. So that was the physical document that judges refused to see. The CPS refused to believe and see, and that what I persisted on proving their negligence. And we received a trial, and my fourth attorney, who I actually paid another $1,500 to prove the forensic evaluator, who, like you, accused me of being borderline personality disorder. And with no test given, no psychiatric eval, but I passed the psychology test but no psychiatric eval. So I paid another $1,500 for another forensic evaluator to come in and review his notes. And he says there's no way that he could have come to this claim without testing you. So we said, all right, let's take it to trial, along with it. And they already had no case, especially since they withdrew the first indication hearing that they tried to throw at me. Yes, I did try to pull them into a hearing, Marianne, on that. And they looked at me saying, who the hell, oh, pardon me, who is this woman? Who is she to be taking us? And, who is she? I mean, I was standing head to head with the county attorney, CPS attorney. And, but they hadn't had a leg to stand on, and they had no proof. 2 months that me and my attorney were supposed to come up with a cross-examining, and we had them, and along with the other forensic evaluator's statement and 100 questions of cross-examining. But guess what my last attorney did last moment?
Probably
2 months
backed
that she
out.
was supposed to be speaking with me. Yes, she did. She backed out. And
Typical.
she, yes, conspired with CPS and worked out a deal. And on the day of cross-examining, she came to me and said, oh, they're willing to withdraw. I said, great, that's wonderful. That's they should, just like they did the first time, the first hearing. But there's one condition, a condition. They want you to sign stipulations. What? Stipulations? What stipulations? Well, they're not going to withdraw unless you agree to stipulations. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. And at that moment, I gave her a few words for about a half hour, and I shamed her in front of everyone. And I said, all this time that you should have been speaking with me, building a cross-examining testimony, and you decide to back out, throw in the white towel, and conspire with them. So yeah, and it was a high-fiving moment for all of them, when they came out of that courtroom, they all wiped their brow, said, "Whew, that was close," and high five, because they coerced me. I
Hmm.
was all alone. They coerced me, put threats on me, take my job away, take my other daughter away, would never see my little one again. They would be in my life for the next year, making it hell. These are the exact words that were said to me. And I had to decide, I had another daughter to take care of. And at the time, I had no other person to support me, to help me, to advise me. When you put your trust and all your money into these supposed attorneys who's supposed to be taking an oath to do the right thing, and they don't, I only had but God. And so at that time, I went in and I knew it was all fraud. And by the way, the judge never did a proper court allocution, never asked us to raise our hand, never asked me if I was under duress when I made the decision verbally. And that alone should have null and voided that. And that went to appeal with that statement. But um, the higher courts, federal courts, don't overturn what the family court's bad decisions are.
Right.
And that was, I believe, one of what Michael Sayan's quotes were, in regards to federal courts. They don't overturn um, state courts' bad decisions. And so I verbally, but then they tried to hide the next court date on me for the signing of the consent. And I found out through my research how to get into the court dates, and I appeared November 22nd, 2015. I'll never forget that date. I went in, surprised them all. Law guardian ad litem was like, "Oh, she's here." She ran in away to tell them that I was there. And I said, "I'm not signing it. I'm not signing it because I was coerced." And I never did sign it. But they managed to get that passed from one judge to another and then to the last judge. And that's when I went to appeal pro se. And that's when I made my own petition, my A through Z petition, along with my motion to have the law guardian ad litem removed.
And this is
It was
what
granted.
parents needs to know. Parents
Oh,
need to
yes.
know what is going on before you walk in there and
Hmm.
what's going to happen. And I think if people are going to call in false allegations, they should be forced to give their name. I think that might
Yes.
end some of the problems there. Uh,
Well, sometimes you won't even get that, and you won't even get that in truth. They could make up a name.
well, that's true too. That is
And
very
a lot
true.
of, and a lot of these calls are anonymous. Um, but even if they did give their name, that's kept under wraps. You know,
Mhm.
look, I totally agree that this system was never made to work for the people. Okay, it
Mhm.
was made to only work for the government, work for profit. Um, and if it's not there for the people, it should be totally abolished.
I
Because
agree.
reform, reform, you know, reform can only be done by the one that created it, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Okay, Congress created this monstrosity. Okay, they're the ones who need to reform it. They're the ones who need to clean it up. And there's a lot going on in Congress, I feel, that should be changed too. Terming them should be a number one thing. Okay, that's another story. But Congress should be the one to fix it, but they're not willing. Okay, and how can you ask and trust the ones that created a problem to fix a problem?
Especially when there's a lot of incentives being made off this problem.
Hmm. Yes. Trafficking within our family court system is the number one problem. Okay. Um, what can we do to help prevent? What can we do to help prevent? Look, I could say from going into family court, you know, um, avoid it, avoid it at all costs. Um,
I
if you were to
noticed.
ask me that question, I would tell you that it brings me back, way back, before the family court horror ever began, to a statement that was made from a magistrate who was standing alongside a law guardian at an intro to a parental education class. She merely stated that it is not the responsibility nor the fault of the court of what partner you decide to have children with. This is what they said, okay, in the middle of the class. In other words, what she was trying to communicate was that it's your fault that you are here. It's not our fault that you're here in this court. It's your fault that you're here. So they're already placing blame the moment that you walk into those doors. It's not their fault, it's your fault. Um,
That's
she
terrible.
further, yeah, it is. She further states that if you, the parent, continue to battle, that a law guardian will be assigned to represent your child, and no matter, quote unquote, no matter what happens, end quote, the judge will believe the law guardian over the parent all the time. No matter what happens, key word, no
Hmm.
matter what happens. Little did I know what that truly meant. Because you have bias, manipulation, terrorizing, false accusations. Law guardian ad litems are puppets to the court. They are aid and abettors, okay?
Hmm.
Here's another statement given to me by a caseworker. Caseworker, okay? In my case, all right? Quote unquote, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. In other words, you're more likely to win people to your side, meaning caseworkers, more easily by gentle persuasions and flattery than by confronting them. Do you understand what I mean?
Hmm.
I've been told that from other people that have experienced with CPS, they said that just be nice to them, be nice, and they'll help you out. They'll give you what you want. Okay, and that statement, that statement that was told to me by that caseworker proved them that they were right. People have been afraid. CPS puts fear in people. Okay, God forbid if you stand up to them and ask them questions, put them on
Hmm.
jury. They don't like it, and they try to rid you. They try to find you. You're a problem. You're a threat to them. That's what it is. You're a threat. I was a threat. And this was when I was arguing the one of the several false allegations that was upon me, that were previously unfounded. Okay. My answer to that question. Okay, you're going to ask me if I was asked, how can we help prevent going into family court? Number one, my answer is going to be number one, make sure you know your partner before you choose to marry, and most importantly, before you decide to have children.
Hmm.
Because once you sign that contract, you are legally binded to that court and state. Should you ever divorce or separate, and anything you own can and will be taken from you, including your children. Uh, what did your previous guest, Michael Sain, say? Um, I believe he said, quote, states don't have to honor our Bill of Rights. end quote. Is that what he said? One of the
Yes.
statements he said?
Yep.
Yes, thanks to federalism, okay, right? In the family court, we the people lost our parental rights, our human rights. And that all due process is not given.
No,
Michael saying he was also correct in stating, I believe he stated, quote, federal principle or system of government will not get involved with states abusing their power and will not overturn bad state court decisions, end quote. Am I correct on that?
yes.
Okay. I
It's
can
a big
concur
house.
with that. I can
Right.
concur. I can concur since I had that experience. When my judge refused a hearing that was granted from an appeal regarding coercion, no due process, improper assistance of counsel, and judge's refusal of permitting evidence, only to be denied, okay, overturned by an appeal due to the family court judge behavior and not reading petitions or holding proper hearing. It remained as coerced stipulations that I had to follow because it was verbally stated. I verbally agreed. They never mentioned about it not being signed, but because I verbally stated, you see how they leave things out? It was never signed.
Yeah, they're very clever. They're
Very
very clever.
clever. Very
Yes.
clever. And if, like I said, if you don't have the smarts, okay, uh, to, again, I was in that court for 6 years, in and out, for 6 years, okay, in and out, in and out, in and out. I observed, I listened, I watched, I researched. And what they have on you is time. Time. They will procrastinate, they will adjourn, they will push your case another month after another month after another month in hopes that you will just give up, break down, go broke, okay? It's a game. It's a game that they play. Time. And then in that time, they're trafficking your child, okay?
That's right.
And they're trafficking your child. And that in itself is slowly deteriorating the family, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Watching that child go through that is tearing the family apart. And then having one parent purposely parental alienate the child from the other parent
Mm-hmm.
because of the time lapse. That's a lot of time going by. We're talking years in the courts. Just think about what that does to your child. And then what it does to the family, both sides. It just tears them apart. That's what the courts prey on. That's what they hope for.
And
And in the
this is, oh, go
meantime, I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
And this is why it seems like advocacy has chosen you, whether you liked it or not. And you've become an advocate and an activist to help other people see this, as the public and parents need to know what's going on. And I know you and I have talked, we have talked about Ginger Gentile's film Erasing Family, which is free on
Yes.
Tubi.
Yes.
And we've talked about, the Sweden model.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to get a divorce, you both sit down and just
mediate
between yourselves instead of
Yeah,
running into a
mediation.
courtroom.
Exactly. Mediation and counseling is always best to resolve domestic issues, so long as both parties are willing, especially when it comes down to your children. Your best bet is to include your assets, because if you choose to settle in family court, they will inevitably choose a side, have you battle, and go against one another. And the ultimate price will be your children. Unfortunately, there are those who will use family court as a weapon to use against their partner, okay, out of vengeance. And that's what the courts hope and pray and bet on.
Because they need to make their money.
Yes, exactly. It's a money pit. It's a money
Oh,
pit.
yes, definitely.
It's a
So,
money pit.
so Dolores, what advice can you give any parent listening to this podcast? What advice can your best advice, if someone walked up to you and said, what do I do? This is what happened. I'm going into family court tomorrow. What would you say?
Oh. Well, Marianne, I can't say that I never questioned why me, which is what I know that most of these moms and dads are saying. What did I do to begin to be going through this? I truly believe that everything good and bad happens for a reason. And you have to be strong. You have to believe that what you're doing is right. You can't never be wrong by doing something right. You have to go in and expect the worst and pray for a good and fair resolution. You know, like I had said before, if you have a good attorney, if you have a fair attorney that's not affiliated with the politics of that court, that county, you have a chance. I would generally tell them to avoid family court at all costs. If you can mediate, if you can somehow sit down and mediate, and I don't mean by going to, they'll try to put you through a magistrate,
Mm-hmm.
a magistrate before seeing a judge. And my first horror was dealing with a magistrate because she eventually was found prejudiced against me on 3 accounts. And it was appealed and we won. And that's how we won for a trial. You know, if you're the good person and you are going to go against the grind because you're a good person, they're going to go against you. You know, they're more for people who will follow with the bouncing ball, you know, and if you have the money, they'll continue to have you go in there and battle with each other until you run out of money. My best advice to you is to go pro se. What have you got to go pro se? You've got, at least you won't be destitute. Go pro se and just
Mm-hmm.
research. Go to the law library. Look up how you can write your own petition, your own motion. Show them that you're smart. Show them that you can learn, because it really just takes common sense. You know, if you could stay out of the courts, stay out of the courts.
That's
Media, yeah, I would just stay out of there, because once you're in that web, it's very difficult to get out. You're in the Black Widow web,
that's
and
very true and
and
very well said.
I will say that ultimately, again, Congress is the one who needs to reform their system that they created. But in all honesty, they won't. They're going to continue this until either one day we wake up and we know that we need to educate the younger generation. That's the key.
That is the key.
We need to educate the younger generation, because when we were young, we were never educated about what family court was. Okay. I do believe that preparing them for the future, getting social sciences to be put into schools, it proves to be beneficial when learning how to build a healthy and stable relationship. when you give kids the building blocks for a strong and healthy relationship, they'll know what to look out for and what to avoid. It will serve them as a solid foundation. Um, what we do and don't do affects society as a whole. And without us preparing the future generations, this vicious cycle of abuse will continue until the end of time. That's what I truly believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, abolishing the system is definite. Abolishing and arresting is definite. Will it happen? I think it's already happening. I think this COVID-19 has stopped a lot, and people are becoming more aware of what is coming out of there and what's going in there.
Mm-hmm.
And some way or another, it's going to be abolished. And if it's not we, the people, doing it, then it's the next generations to come that need to do it. Ginger Gentile set up a platform on erasing.org specifically for the teens and younger kids. She created a documentary regarding parental alienation, divorce, and separations in the family court. So, and she's trying to get it into schools. She's trying to get into courts for judges, for therapists. I see that some will be dismissing it, but she's right in trying to get into schools, and I pray that happens. But that's going to be very trying and difficult. But definitely send that out. It's a YouTube video. It's free on Tubi. Send it to anyone any teenager so that they can send it to their friends, so forth and so on. Guaranteed to wake up the younger generation to say, wow, I'm not alone. They need to know
Mm-hmm.
that they're not alone, okay, because they're not. And to give them hope of what they can do, and to help them learn that there's a lot of false in this system, and they could be well more prepared. That's what's being kept from us, Marianne.
Mm-hmm.
The government doesn't want us to know that. But for those who are going through it right now, you have to find something to believe in. My faith has been my salvation. And I don't know if you believe in God, Jesus, Buddha, I don't care if you believe in the tree outside. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in something, because that's what's going to put you through. Believe in the truth. Believe in yourself. Believe in your children. And no matter what happens to them, just know it's not their fault. It never was their fault. They need to know that you're still there for them, that you're healthy, mindfully, physically, and eventually the truth will come out. Eventually, hopefully. But the thing right now, I could say, Marianne, is that I don't have trust in that system.
I don't think any of us do.
I don't have trust in that. I have trust in God above. I know
Mm-hmm.
that He will take ashes and make beauty from ashes. And we have to believe in that. We have to hold at least that. And He will make everything for the good. But I understand that many moms and dads we've lost through this horrific system. Because of this system, we've even lost children, precious children, through the hands of people who have been manipulated by the system, who use the system for their own sin. You just have to stay steadfast and strong. And if you find that you see a pattern, okay, for those who are going through this, and you see a pattern happening over again, and you keep going in and out, and you're saying, what's the same thing? Wake up. That pattern is happening for a reason, to make you know, it's telling you that it's not going anywhere. It's telling you it's not going anywhere. Um, a lot of these players, lawyers, attorneys, they're puppets, you know, they're puppets to the court. Um, like in your case, Marianne, what did you have? You had a conflict of interest.
Many.
Yeah, conflict of interest. And yeah, I remember hearing that in your story. Yes, and I could say that mine too. The opposing attorney helped out with the judge's campaign heavily, and had many dinners and God only knows what else, um, to get their way. And it's not the only judge. It's not it's not the only time. This system, it's been happening for decades, decades. And if it hasn't changed by now, okay, I don't think anything is going to change it. We need to educate the young. We need to educate them so that
Yes.
they can decide where they want their future to end up. We have a lot of I'm hearing a lot of the younger generation, well, not so young, but those in their late teens and a little older are deciding not to have children. you know don't feed the
Right.
monster. you know
Right.
don't
Right.
feed the monster, because that's what they prey on. you know
And it's not safe. It's just not safe to bring a baby into this world anymore. I hate to sound horrible.
no,
uh, I may get a
it's
lot of
it's
flack for that, but
uh, you know what, you're only stating the truth, because um, the world is being challenged, has been being challenged for quite some time, and we're all starting to see that now. And you know uh, we all are able to have children, but are we having children for the right reasons? You have to think about that. you know is it for selfish reasons? Is it for uh, are you ready to have that child? Is it safe to have a child now in the
mhm,
world we have today? um, you know uh, I hate to even say it too, but many are having children to the sole purpose so they can survive. What do you mean by that, Dolores? What do you mean that? Well, many people can't survive in the world that we're living today, with how it's being run, the expense, and they want us to live off the state. And that's why people have children, so they can have a life, a part of life, so they can have the state fund them and take care of their kids. But that's not
mm-mm, mm-mm.
that's not the way to do it. It's not the way to do it. And nowadays, think about it. Mom and dad have to work, right? Right?
Right.
Who made that world? Federalism made that world, right? Where
Yeah.
now mom and dad have to work, and who's going to be taking care of your child? Daycare, you know, state, right?
Mhm.
It's becoming a a state deprived. We're all having to depend upon the state. That's what they want, right? So why give them
That's
what they
right.
want? Why give them what they want?
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I was
Mhm.
going to ask you, when you do talk to parents, how can you be reached? Do you have them contact you via your email? How do you want to tell how you can be reached?
Sure. Yeah, I could be reached at my email, legendoflolaleo@gmail.com. You can also go on YouTube, look up my videos, Unjustifiably Torn Apart, Family Unjustifiably Torn Apart. You will see my two videos. Uh, and anyone can write to me through my email. As a matter of fact, I do have parents writing to me. I'm also on Facebook. Dolores Feliciano, and feel free to look at my page. And I'm willing. I'm here to listen. I am here to support, spiritually support. If you have any questions, I will help you the best way that I can from my own experience. And I have a lot of information that I can give to you, and a lot of experience I can give to you. And I do believe that because of my life experience, um, uh, you know, I feel that I'm a channel. I'm a channel in the sense that I could be of some comfort. If I could be of some comfort and give some sort of peace to others who are living through this same tragedy, then please reach out to me, and I will be here.
And I'm so happy to have you on, Dolores. You're such a tenacious advocate, activist for these parents that are being alienated. And I'm so glad to have you on Slam the Gavel. This is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption. Please join us again in the future for another awesome episode. And I thank you again, Dolores. Have a good night.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you for having me.